Back, I'm Gareth Edwards. A huge pleasure to have you with us this morning. Pierre de Vos has written a column in the Daily Maverick saying that he's not going to add his voice to those protesting against rape. He writes that expressions of outrage may be well-meaning, but they absolve us of our own responsibilities. Well, let's get some reaction to this by someone else who follows the scourge of rape in the country very, very closely as well. Ms. Lisa Vetten, independent researcher, joining us again on the show. Lisa, morning to you. We're going to go through bits of what Pierre de Vos wrote in just a moment, but when you first read the headline, you think that this is simply an author and a professor who's decided he's no longer interested in rape in the country, but that's not quite what he's saying, is it?
No, it isn't. And I do have to agree with him. I mean, I think just watching how things have unfolded over the last few weeks, it really reinforces for me why we have the problem we do. Our public discourse around prevention and human behaviour is truly impoverished. The idea that by castrating and hanging, you're going to stop rape, and by going on marches and signing petitions, that's also going to stop rape. That might be useful, but it's certainly not going to do anything about the problem in the medium and the long term.
It's funny, I want to pick up on, I'm busy looking at the article at the moment, Lisa, forgive me for looking away from you, as you talk about why Pierre de Vos won't join the chorus of protesting against rape. He simply says that expressing your outrage about the shocking state of affairs may make you feel better. And that's really what it is, especially with the world of social media at the moment. People simply feel it's, according to Pierre anyway, you comment about rape, you say that you don't agree with it, of course, and that's the end of it almost.
Yes, and when you actually probe a little bit deeper, what people don't agree with are baby rapes and the rapes of elderly women and very brutal rapes. Suddenly, their outrage diminishes once you start talking about younger women who might have been wearing miniskirts, who might have been out late at night. So our outrage is somewhat superficial and selective, unfortunately.
And it's about taking that outrage further and actually doing something with it. But speaking of outrage, I'd like to bring up, if we can, the one part of what is quite an in-depth article by Pierre de Vos. Here it is next to me. Excuse me while I read it. The expression of outrage is a distancing device and ultimately self-serving. I fear the smell of self-congratulatory self-indulgence clinging to the enterprise. Expressions of outrage position us in opposition to the evil that we rush to condemn. Rapists are evil, but unknown people, quote, out there, unquote. They are not our friends, our brothers, our fathers, our teachers, or our sporting heroes. That's Professor Pierre de Vos right in this article. And this is exactly what I imagine an organisation and work that you do is trying to get through. It goes beyond you and I even talking about this morning.
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's a tendency to want to think that rapists are monsters and sick. They're not. They don't walk around with a sign, rapist, on their head. They're very ordinary, everyday people who may have good qualities in addition to their unpleasant and hostile attitudes towards women. And I think at the end of the day, we're really not getting to grips with the problem. We're framing it very much as women's victimization, when actually the problem in South Africa is men's violence, not only towards women, but to men as well. So I think if we're going to talk about shifting this into a more medium and long-term strategy to ultimately prevent, we have to look at what are the everyday normalized practices of sexism that we take for granted, that we look the other way, or we just think, okay, so-and-so's a jerk, and we say nothing about it. I think it's also getting people to think about what can you do more practically. For instance, could your workplace perhaps put together a collection for your local rape crisis centre in terms of the comfort and safety packs? Could you go to an area where there are no business communities and perhaps help paint or make that police victim room more approachable? I mean, those are small things. You could gather funding for organisations who are providing counselling. You could invite them to your workplace to come and engage with you around what are the myths and stereotypes about rape? Why does it happen? What do we need to do in our everyday lives to contribute to reducing rape?
Pierre picks up on a comment, a campaign, any campaign, and I quote, needs to challenge male power and domination. Rape is really a male issue, if you read into this, isn't it?
Well, it is, and I think the massive problem we have to try and challenge in some ways is the sense of men's masculine sexual entitlement. There is this assumption that women's chief purpose in life is to provide sex. So yes, you ask them, but it's merely going through the motions. You are going to have sex whether women agree or not. So we have myths like women say no when they mean yes, or women play hard to get, which I think are used as a way of justifying what is really the use of coercion, sometimes outright force, in order to ensure that a woman submits.
Why do you and I keep having this conversation? Where's that line in the sand where you and I can finally sit across each other as two South Africans and go, all right, we're on top of this? What is that line? I'm looking for that line this morning.
That line is, I think, less emotion and less noise, and more willingness to sit down and listen and engage. It's also, I think, the need to move out of purely punitive responses like, oh, castrate and let's bring back the death penalty. It's about looking at ourselves and what we excuse in everyday behaviour For example, pinching someone's bum on the street, talking about how beautiful they are, what beautiful breasts they have, all that we call complimenting, which isn't really. It's the thin wedge moving towards sexual harassment, which in its worst form can become rape. I would like to see us starting to have discussions that go beyond outrage to why is this happening? What do we need to do differently? What are the conditions in which young men are living right now that we need to change? Because they're not behaving like this because they woke up one morning and had some kind of mental storm. There are reasons that sometimes begin in childhood. There are reasons, the behavior they see in their community, that we need to tackle and actually do something concretely about rather than just getting upset about it.
Lisa, hopefully one day you and I will be able to have a more positive conversation about rape, but as always, it's a pleasure to have you in despite the topic we're talking about. It's a big pleasure to have you with us. Independent researcher Lisa Vetten talking about an article written by Pierre de Vos. What we'll do on Twitter and Facebook, by the way, at eNCA News on Twitter, I will post that link to the article for Pierre de Vos. You're welcome to go and take a look and see exactly why it is. If I quickly find the headline for you very quickly of what it says and why I won't join the chorus of voices protesting against rape. It's an interesting article from one of our regular analysts.